Jack Thompson liked to spend his evenings outside, far away from the noise of the house. He lived in a small town in Iowa, where life was quiet and predictable. Most people knew each other by name, and nothing much ever happened. But Jack wasn't, like most people, while others spent their nights watching TV or scrolling through their phones. Jack preferred to look up at the stars. He had always been fascinated by space. As a kid, he would lie on the grass behind his parents' house, staring at the sky until his neck hurts. Now, as an adult, he owned a modest telescope that he set up on the roof of his garage every clear night. It wasn't anything fancy, just enough to let him explore the craters of the moon or spot Saturn's rings, but it brought him joy. For Jack, those moments under the stars were a kind of escape. They made him feel small but also connected to something bigger. One chilly evening in October, Jack noticed something unusual. Through the lens of his telescope, he saw a faint blur moving across the sky. At first he thought it might be a satellite, or maybe even space junk. But, as he adjusted the focus, the blur resolved into something more defined, a cluster of lights, too uniform to be random. His heart raced as he realized what he was looking at. Ships. Dozens of them, and they were heading toward Earth. For a moment, Jack froze, unsure of what to do. Was this real? Could it actually be happening? He double-checked his equipment, recalibrated the telescope, and confirmed his findings. The ships were still there, steadily advancing. This wasn't some trick of the light or a glitch in his gear. Something or someone was coming. The next morning, Jack couldn't keep it to himself any longer. He posted pictures of the ships on social media, along with a detailed description of what he'd seen. "I don't know who or what these things are," he wrote, "but I think we need to pay attention." He tagged local news outlets and astronomy groups, hoping someone would take him seriously. Instead, the response was overwhelming and not in the way he'd hoped. Within hours, his post went viral, but not because people believed him. Comments poured in, calling him crazy, delusional, or just plain stupid. "Nice Photoshop skills," one user joked. "Did you use your kid's toy spaceship for this?" Another sneered. Even friends from his hometown chimed in, teasing him about his alien obsession. Jack felt crushed. He hadn't expected everyone to believe him right away, but he'd hoped for at least a little curiosity. Instead, all he got was mockery. When he tried to explain how careful he'd been, how certain he was of what he'd seen, no one listened. Some accused him of seeking attention. Others dismissed him outright. A few even suggested he delete the post before it ruined his reputation. At home, things weren't much better. His wife, Laura, tried to comfort him, but she could see how upset he was. "Maybe they're just scared," she said gently. "People don't like change, especially when it's something big like this." Their teenage daughter, Emily, didn't say much. She mostly stayed in her room, avoiding the tension between her parents. Still, Jack could tell she was worried about him. He caught her watching him sometimes, her brow furrowed, as if she wasn't sure whether to believe him or not. But Jack wasn't alone in noticing the strange activity in the skies. Hundreds of miles away, Rachel Monroe sat in her office at NASA's headquarters in Houston, staring at a screen filled with data. Rachel was an astrophysicist, one of the best in her field. Her job was to analyze patterns in deep space signals, searching for anything unusual. Lately, though, she'd started seeing anomalous tiny fluctuations in radiation levels that didn't match known phenomena. At first, she thought it might be interference from solar flares or faulty equipment. But the more she looked, the clearer it became. Something out there didn't belong. When Rachel stumbled upon Jack's post online, she felt a jolt of recognition. His description of the ships matched the trajectory of the signals she'd been tracking. Maybe he wasn't as crazy as everyone thought. Taking a risk, she sent him a private message. "Hi, I'm Rachel," she wrote. "I work at NASA, and I think I've seen the same thing you have. Can we talk?" Jack was skeptical at first. How could he know this wasn't another prank? But something about Rachel's tone seemed genuine. After exchanging a few messages, they decided to collaborate. Rachel shared algorithms she'd developed to process astronomical data, which helped Jack refine his observations. Together, they uncovered even more evidence of the approaching fleet. Despite their progress, convincing anyone else remained impossible. Rachel's superiors laughed off her concerns, telling her not to waste time on conspiracy theories. When she persisted, they threatened disciplinary action. Frustrated but undeterred, she continued working with Jack in secret, hoping they could find a way to warn the world before it was too late. As days turned into weeks, the fleet drew closer. Jack spent every waking moment glued to his telescope, tracking its movements. Each night brought new details, new reasons to worry. The ships were massive, far larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved with precision, like pieces on a chessboard, positioning themselves strategically. Around Earth's orbit. Laura grew increasingly anxious as she watched her husband spiral deeper into obsession. "You're going to make yourself sick," she told him one evening, finding him hunched over his laptop at 2 in the morning. "What if you're wrong, Jack? What then?" "I'm not wrong," he replied firmly, though doubt lingered in the back of his mind. "And if I am, well, at least I tried." Deep down, Jack knew the truth. Whether anyone believed him or not, the ships were real. Humanity was running out of time. Jack and Rachel worked tirelessly, their collaboration becoming a lifeline for both of them. Each night, they exchanged messages, shared data, and refined their understanding of the approaching fleet. Jack's telescope provided visual confirmation of the ship's movements, while Rachel's expertise helped decode faint signals that seemed to emanate from the fleet itself. Together, they pieced together fragments of information that painted a terrifying picture. The aliens weren't here to explore or negotiate. They were coming with purpose, and it wasn't friendly. One evening, as Jack adjusted his telescope to get a clearer view of the fleet, he noticed something new. A bright pulse of light flashed briefly from one of the larger ships, followed by a series of smaller bursts. He recorded the pattern and sent the footage to Rachel immediately. Within hours, she replied with an analysis. "It's a message," she wrote. "I think they're broadcasting something." Rachel spent the next day running simulations and cross-referencing frequencies, until she finally cracked part of the code. The message was chilling. "You are unworthy. Your kind destroys without thought. We will cleanse this world." She stared at her screen for a long time after deciphering it, her hands trembling. This wasn't just an invasion, it was judgment. When Rachel shared the decoded message with Jack, he felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "We have to tell someone," he said, "if we can make people understand." But no matter how hard they tried, no one listened. Jack posted the translated message online, hoping it would spark alarm, or at least curiosity. Instead, the ridicule intensified. Commenters mocked him relentlessly, accusing him of fabricating the entire thing. Some even suggested he was trying to start a panic for attention. "Classic conspiracy theorist move," one user quipped. "Now they're making up alien speeches. What's next?" Rachel fared no better. When she presented her findings to her supervisor at NASA, he dismissed her outright. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, tossing her report onto his desk. "You're wasting resources on nonsense. Stick to your actual job." Frustrated but unwilling to give up, Rachel decided to bypass the chain of command. She reached out. 2 colleagues she trusted, sharing her data and urging them to verify her results. But fear of backlash kept most of them silent. Only a few dared to help, and even then, their efforts were limited. As the days passed, the strain began to show. Jack grew quieter, retreating into himself as the weight of his discovery pressed down on him. Laura watched him closely, her concern deepening with each passing day. "You're not sleeping," she said one night, finding him still awake at 3 in the morning. You can't keep going like this, Jack. I don't have a choice, he replied, his voice hollow. If I stop now, who else is going to do something? Laura didn't know how to respond. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that what he was doing mattered, but the constant rejection wore her down too. Their arguments became more frequent, small frustrations boiling over into shouting matches. Emily, caught in the middle, tried to stay out of it, but the tension made the house feel suffocating. She started spending more time at friends' houses, avoiding the unease that had settled over their family. Meanwhile, Rachel faced challenges of her own. Her superiors at NASA grew suspicious of her late-night emails and unauthorized research. One afternoon, she was called into a meeting with her department head, who demanded an explanation for her behavior. "You've been stepping out of line," he said sternly. "If you continue down this path, there will be consequences." Rachel left the meeting shaken but resolute. She couldn't abandon the truth, no matter the cost. That night, she sent Jack a message. "They're watching me now. I'll do what I can, but we may run out of time." The two of them knew they needed to plant something concrete to prove the threat was real. Jack suggested reaching out to local news stations, thinking that if they could get airtime, they might reach a wider audience. Rachel agreed, though she doubted it would work. "Desperate times call for desperate measures," she said wryly. Their first attempt ended in failure. The news crew laughed off Jack's claims, cutting the interview short when he mentioned aliens. "Sorry, buddy," the host said with a smirk. "We stick to facts around here." Humiliated but determined, Jack and Rachel regrouped. They decided to focus on gathering irrefutable evidence, something so undeniable that even skeptics would have to take notice. Over the next week, they worked non-stop. Jack monitored the fleet's movements with obsessive precision, documenting every detail. Rachel analyzed signal patterns, searching for anything that could strengthen their case. Finally, they found something promising. A faint transmission originating from the largest ship. It was garbled and fragmented, but Rachel managed to isolate key phrases. "Prepare, final phase," was all they could make out, but it was enough. Armed with this new evidence, they prepared for another attempt to sound the alarm. This time they targeted independent journalists, known for covering fringe topics. One reporter, a young woman named Claire, agreed to meet with them. Over coffee, they laid out their findings, showing her screenshots, audio clips, and detailed logs. Clara listened intently, her expression shifting from skepticism to alarm. "This is huge," she said when they finished. "If this is true, it changes everything." "It is true," Jack insisted, his voice cracking with emotion. "Please, you have to help us." Clara promised to look into it, though she warned them not to expect miracles. "People don't like being scared," she said, "even when they should be." Back home, Jack allowed himself a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, someone would finally listen. But deep down, he knew time was running out. The fleet was closer now, its shadow looming over Earth like a storm cloud. Every night, he looked through his telescope, watching the ships grow larger in the sky. Laura joined him one evening, standing quietly beside him as he adjusted the lens. "Do you really think they're coming?" she asked softly. Jack hesitated before answering. "Yes," he said finally, "and I think we're running out of chances to stop them." Neither of them spoke after that, the silence heavy with unspoken fears. Above them, the stars twinkled innocently, oblivious to the chaos brewing beyond their light. The day the fleet entered Earth's orbit, everything changed. The sky darkened unnaturally, as massive alien ships positioned themselves high above major cities around the globe. Their presence was impossible to ignore, towering metallic structures that glinted menacingly in the sunlight, casting long shadows over the ground below. For Jack Thompson, watching from his backyard with his telescope, it felt like staring into the face of doom. Laura stood beside him, her arms crossed tightly against the chill creeping into the air. She hadn't said much since the previous night, when they had sat together in silence, both knowing there was nothing left to do but wait. Now, as panic erupted across the world, she finally broke the quiet. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jack didn't answer right away. He adjusted the focus on his telescope, zooming in on one of the ships hovering ominously over Des Moines, just an hour's drive away. It looked even bigger up close, its surface covered in strange markings and glowing panels. "I don't know," he admitted, lowering the lens. "But whatever it is, it won't be good." Within minutes, the aliens made their intentions clear. A deep hum filled the air, vibrating through windows and rattling dishes inside houses. Then, a voice boomed not from speakers or radios, but directly in people's minds. Everyone heard it, no matter where they were or what language they spoke. The message was simple and terrifying. Your kind has proven unworthy. Your greed, your violence, your destruction, it ends now. Prepare for annihilation. Chaos erupted almost instantly. People poured out of their homes, screaming and crying, unsure of what to do. Cars clogged highways as families tried to flee cities, only to find roads blocked by others doing the same. Emergency broadcasts blared conflicting instructions. Some urged evacuation, while others told citizens to stay indoors and prepare for impact. Governments scrambled to respond, but their efforts were disjointed and ineffective. No one knew how to fight back against something so vast and powerful. Rachel Monroe watched the unfolding disaster from her apartment in Houston. Her phone buzzed constantly with alerts and messages, but she ignored them, her eyes glued to the live news footage, showing scenes of panic worldwide. Fires burned in Los Angeles after a sudden power surge caused widespread blackouts. In London, rioters clashed with police as martial law was declared. Tokyo had gone eerily silent, its streets deserted except for emergency vehicles racing toward evacuation centers. Her hands shook as she dialed Jack's number. When he answered, his voice sounded strained but determined. "They're here," he said before she could speak. "Just like we warned." "I know," Rachel replied, her tone grim. "We have to act fast if we want to save anyone. Do you still trust me?" "Of course," Jack said without hesitation. "What do you need me to do?" Rachel explained, her plan quickly. There was a military base not far from Jack's town, an old facility rumored to house experimental weapons designed to combat aerial threats. If they could get inside, they might find something capable of damaging the alien ships. It was a long shot, but it was better than doing nothing. Jack agreed immediately, though the thought of breaking into a military base terrified him. He hung up with Rachel and turned to Laura, who had been listening silently. "I need to go," he said, already grabbing his coat. "Rachel thinks we can stop them more, at least slow them down." Laura grabbed his arm, her grip firm. "You can't go alone," she said firmly. "It's too dangerous." "I'll be careful," Jack promised, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. "Stay here with Emily. Keep her safe." Before she could argue further, he kissed her goodbye and rushed out the door. The streets were eerily empty as he drove toward the base, adrenaline coursing through him. Along the way, he passed abandoned cars and shattered storefronts, reminders of the chaos consuming the world. At the edge of town, he met up with Rachel, who had driven all night to reach him. She looked exhausted, but resolute, her laptop tucked under one arm and a backpack slung over her shoulder. "Did you bring everything?" she asked as they climbed into Jack's car. "As much as I could carry," Jack replied, nodding toward the back seat, where a duffel bag full of tools and supplies lay. "Let's hope it's enough." The journey to the base took longer than expected due to roadblocks and detours, but eventually, they arrived. The entrance was guarded by soldiers armed with rifles, their faces tense with fear. Jack parked a safe distance away and turned to Rachel. "Now what?" he whispered. Rachel opened her laptop and pulled up a map of the base she'd downloaded earlier. "There's an underground tunnel system," she explained. "If we can sneak in through there, we might avoid detection." Sneaking past the guards proved harder than they anticipated. Every movement felt like a gamble, every sound amplified in the eerie quiet. But luck was on their side, or maybe desperation, and they managed to slip into the tunnels unnoticed. Inside, the air was damp and cold. The walls lined with rusting pipes and flickering fluorescent lights. As they moved deeper into the complex, they encountered signs warning of restricted areas and deadly experiments. Rachel led the way, consulting her map frequently to ensure they stayed on course. Finally, they reached a heavily secured door marked Weapons Development Lab. Using a combination of hacking skills and brute force, Rachel managed to override the lock, and the door hissed open. Inside, they found exactly what they were looking for: rows of sleek, futuristic-looking weapons mounted on racks. Some resembled traditional firearms, while others looked like something out of science fiction. Rachel examined each one carefully, searching for anything labeled as anti-aircraft or energy-based. After several tense minutes, she held up a device about the size of a rifle. "This might work," she said, handing it to Jack. "It uses plasma bursts to disrupt electromagnetic fields. If these ships rely on tech similar to ours, this could take out their shields." Jack nodded, testing the weight of the weapon in his hands. "How do we use it?" he asked. Rachel flipped open a panel on the side of the device, revealing a series of controls. "It's complicated, but I think I can figure it out," she said. "We'll need to get close to one of the ships to test it properly." Close to the ships meant risking their lives, but neither of them hesitated. They packed as many weapons as they could carry and prepared to leave the lab. As they retraced their steps through the tunnels, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Above them, the alien fleet loomed larger than ever, a constant reminder of the stakes. When they emerged from the base, the world outside felt different, quieter, heavier. The initial wave of panic had subsided, replaced by a grim sense of inevitability. People huddled in groups, clutching loved ones, or staring blankly at the sky. Soldiers patrolled the streets, their expressions grim. Jack glanced at Rachel, who looked just as determined as he felt. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. "Let's show them humanity isn't done fighting yet." Jack and Rachel drove cautiously through the deserted streets, their stolen weapons packed securely in the back seat. The air outside felt heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Every so often, they passed groups of people huddled together, their faces pale with fear. Some prayed, others simply stared at the sky, watching the alien ships hover ominously above them. Their destination was a smaller vessel from the fleet that had descended closer to the ground near a rural area just outside Des Moines. It wasn't one of the massive command ships, but still large enough to pose a significant threat. If they could disable even one ship, it might buy humanity some time more, at least prove that resistance was possible. As they approached the site, they noticed signs of destruction everywhere. Trees were uprooted, buildings reduced to rubble, and fires smoldered in the distance. The alien ship loomed ahead, its metallic surface gleaming under the dim sunlight. Guards stall, insect-like creatures with glowing eyes patrolled the perimeter, their movements precise and mechanical. Jack swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "This is insane," he muttered under his breath. Rachel leaned forward, studying the scene intently. "We can do this," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. "Stay focused." They parked the car a safe distance away and began planning their approach. Using binoculars, Rachel scanned the area for weak points in the alien defenses. She pointed out a narrow ravine that led close to the ship's landing gear. "If we move carefully, we might be able to get close without being seen," she whispered. Jack nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. "What chance?" Did two ordinary people have against an advanced alien force? Still, there was no turning back now. They grabbed the plasma weapon and a few other tools before setting off on foot, sticking to the shadows as much as possible. The journey through the ravine was slow and nerve-wracking. Every snapped twig or rustling leaf made them freeze, hearts pounding as they listened for any sign of discovery. At one point, a patrol of alien guards passed overhead, their eerie hum resonant in the stillness. Jack pressed himself flat against the ground, barely daring to breathe until the sound faded away. When they finally reached the base of the ship, they found themselves staring up at a towering structure that seemed almost alive, pulsating faintly with energy. Rachel examined the plasma weapon, adjusting its settings based on her earlier research. "This should work," she murmured, though uncertainty lingered in her tone. "But we'll only get one shot." Jack nodded grimly. "Let's make it count." Before they could act, however, a voice called out behind them, "What are you doing here?" Startled, they turned to see a man standing a few feet away, dressed in camouflage fatigues and holding a rifle. His face was rugged, with sharp cheekbones and tired eyes. He looked like someone who had seen too much war. "I'm Daniel Hayes." He introduced himself after lowering his weapon slightly. "Former Army. I've been tracking these things since they arrived." His gaze shifted between Jack and Rachel, taking in their makeshift arsenal. "You're not military, are you?" "No," Rachel admitted. "But we know what we're doing, or at least, we think we do." Daniel studied them for a moment before nodding. "Good, because whatever you're planning, you'll need help." Without waiting for a response, he joined them, offering his expertise and knowledge of guerrilla tactics. Together, the trio devised a plan. Rachel would handle the weapon, while Jack and Daniel provided cover, distracting the guards long enough for her to take the shot. The operation began with precision. Jack and Daniel moved first, creating noise near the edge of the ravine to draw the attention of the alien patrols. As expected, several guards broke away from their posts to investigate, leaving the landing gear exposed. Rachel seized the opportunity, sprinting toward the ship with the plasma weapon clutched tightly in her hands. Her heart raced as she positioned herself beneath the massive structure, aiming the weapon at the glowing panel embedded in the landing gear. Her fingers trembled as she activated the device, praying it would work. A low whine filled the air as the weapon charged, followed by a blinding flash of light. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the ship shuddered violently, sparks erupting from its base. "Yes," Rachel shouted, unable to contain her excitement. The landing gear collapsed, sending the ship crashing to the ground with a deafening roar. Smoke billowed into the sky as alarms blared from within the wreckage. Jack and Daniel rejoined her moments later, panting and grinning despite the chaos around them. "We did it," Jack said, his voice thick with disbelief. "We actually did it?" But their victory was short-lived. The remaining alien guards regrouped quickly, converging on their position with alarming speed. The trio scrambled to retreat, narrowly avoiding blasts of energy that tore through the ground behind them. They dove into the ravine just as another patrol flew overhead, searching for survivors. For a moment, all they could do was lie there, catching their breath and listening to the distant hum of alien activity. Despite the danger, a spark of hope ignited within them. They had proven that the invaders weren't invincible and that humanity still had a fighting chance. Back at Jack's car, they took stock of their injuries and supplies. Daniel winced as he examined a gash on his arm, but shrugged it off. "Could have been worse," he said with a wry smile. "Now what?" Rachel glanced at Jack, her expression resolute. "We spread the word, show people that we can fight back. If we can take down one ship, we can take down more." Jack nodded, determination replacing the fear that had gripped him earlier. "Then let's get started." As they drove away from the crash site, the alien fleet loomed above them, a constant reminder of the battle ahead. But for the first time since the invasion began, they felt a flicker of hope. Humanity wasn't defeated yet, not as long as there were those willing to stand and fight. The crash of the alien ship sent shockwaves through the surrounding area, both literal and figurative. The explosion lit up the night sky, a fiery beacon that could be seen for miles. People who had been huddled in fear began to emerge from their homes, drawn by the noise and the sight of smoke rising into the air. Jack, Rachel, and Daniel watched from a safe distance as news of their success spread like wildfire. At first, disbelief reigned. Many assumed the destruction was just another attack by the invaders, proof that humanity stood no chance against such overwhelming power. But as eyewitness accounts trickled in, locals describing 3 figures sneaking near the ship before it went down, the narrative shifted. Slowly, people started to realize what had happened. Someone had fought back. Someone had won. Word reached social media almost instantly. Videos of the smoking wreckage circulated online, accompanied by captions like "Aliens aren't invincible, and resistance is real." For the first time since the fleet arrived, hope sparked among survivors. Jack's earlier posts, once mocked and dismissed, resurfaced with renewed interest. Commenters, who had ridiculed him weeks ago, now apologized profusely, calling him a hero. Others demanded answers. How did they do it? What weapons did they use? Could the same strategy work elsewhere? Rachel monitored the reactions closely, her laptop glowing faintly in the dark car as they drove toward a temporary shelter set up outside town. She couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and unease. "This changes everything," she said softly, glancing at Jack in the driver's seat. "People are starting to believe." "Good," Jack replied, his voice firm, despite the exhaustion etched on his face. "Because we'll need all the help we can get if we're going to take down the rest of them." Daniel sat in the back seat, cleaning his rifle and occasionally chiming in with tactical advice. Though he had only joined them hours ago, he already felt like part of the team. "We should focus on spreading the word about that weapon," he suggested. "If more people know how to use it, we can hit multiple targets at once." Rachel nodded. "I'll write up instructions and post them online. But we'll also need to find more of those plasma weapons. They're our best shot." As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the trio reached the Sheltora converted high school gymnasium filled with frightened families and weary volunteers. Soldiers guarded the perimeter, their faces grim but alert. Inside, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. News of the downed ship had reached even this remote location, lifting spirits just enough to keep despair at bay. Jack hesitated before entering, suddenly aware of the weight of expectation on his shoulders. Just days ago, he had been an ordinary man, mocked for his warnings and ignored by the world. Now, he was being hailed as a symbol of resistance. Laura and Emily crossed his mind, and he wondered if they were safe if they'd heard the news. He pushed the thought aside. There was no time for distractions. Inside the gym, Rachel took charge, setting up a makeshift workstation with her laptop and notes. She quickly typed out a detailed guide on how to operate the plasma weapon, including diagrams and safety tips. When she uploaded it to a secure server, the document went viral within minutes. Messages poured in from all over the country, people thanking her, asking questions, or offering assistance. Meanwhile, Jack and Daniel worked to rally volunteers. A small group of civilians gathered around them, eager to learn how to fight back. Among them was Mia Foster, a young engineer who introduced herself with quiet confidence. "I used to work on classified projects for the military," she explained. "If you need help modifying weapons or understanding alien tech, I'm your girl." Her offer came at the perfect time. As the day wore on, scavengers returned from the crash site, carrying fragments of alien equipment salvaged from the wreckage. Some pieces were unrecognizable smooth, metallic objects covered in strange symbols, but others looked eerily similar to Earth technology. Mia examined each item carefully, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "These shields," she said, holding up a curved panel. They're tied to electromagnetic frequencies. If we can disrupt those frequencies, we might be able to disable entire ships without firing a shot. Rachel listened intently, jotting down notes. That's brilliant, she said. Can you build something based on that idea? Mia nodded. Give me a day or two, and I'll have a prototype ready. While Mia got to work, Jack focused on organizing patrols. With Daniel's guidance, they trained volunteers in basic combat techniques and taught them how to handle the plasma weapons. It wasn't much, but it was a start. For the first time since the invasion began, people felt like they had a purpose, a reason to keep fighting. But the aliens weren't idle. Retaliation came swiftly and brutally. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the skies above the shelter lit up with streaks of green light. Alien drones descended rapidly, targeting anyone in sight. Soldiers fired back with conventional weapons, but the attackers' shields absorbed the bullets effortlessly. Civilians screamed and scattered, seeking cover wherever they could find it. Jack grabbed a plasma rifle and sprinted toward the chaos, shouting orders to the volunteers. Stick together. Aim for the panels on their chests. The weapon hummed in his hands as he fired, the beam slicing through one drone's shield and sending it crashing to the ground. Encouraged by his success, others followed suit, taking down several more attackers. Despite their efforts, the assault was relentless. Buildings collapsed under concentrated blasts, and fires erupted throughout the compound. Amid the chaos, Rachel spotted Mia crouched behind a pile of rubble, clutching her prototype device. It's not ready yet, Mia shouted over the noise. Make it ready? Rachel yelled back, dragging her behind a wall for cover. Now's our only chance. With shaking hands, Mia adjusted the settings on her invention, activating it just as another wave of drones approached. A low-frequency pulse rippled outward, invisible but palpable. One by one, the drone shields flickered and failed, leaving them vulnerable to attack. Cheers erupted from the defenders as they capitalized on the opening, picking off the remaining enemies with precision. When the dust settled, the survivors regrouped, assessing the damage. The shelter was in ruins, but most of the civilians had made it out alive. More importantly, they had proven something crucial. Humanity could adapt. They could innovate. They could fight back. As the night stretched on, Jack, Rachel, Daniel, and Mia gathered around a makeshift campfire, exhausted but determined. This was just the beginning, Jack said, staring into the flames. They'll come again, harder, and faster than before. We need to be ready. Rachel nodded, her expression fierce. Then let's make sure we are. And for the first time in days, hope didn't feel like a distant dream, it felt like a plan.